by the way, because Daddy's out of town, and my son's everywhere, so I am on mommy duty. And long story short, my cell phone's dead. So I had to charge it enough to finally be able to call. Let's get into a circle. So let's move these first 4 tables back, get into a circle real quick.
Yay! Why didn't I think of
We
that?
had a great time together. I have been looking forward to this.
I'll move this again.
This was fascinating to me. Yes, we did that. I told her what, so Curfew went out. What?
I just talked to him because it's easier to move. On the table? Here, grab a chair.
That'll do. Grab a chair.
I'll start the circle right here.
Thank you, Dylan.
Oh, Professor.
Trying not to grab his. And there it went.
At least the camera's still there.
I know, I was like,
All right, guys. It's not that big a deal, really. We'll be all right without all this stuff. Here, come on in.
trying to unplug it, but
No, it's okay. Here, I got it. I'll get some towels.
Find a chair, come into a circle.
But I appreciate you guys helping out. I'm just saying, it's making me nervous.
Actually, I did. I told him about it. I was on my way to Ireland, literally, and I looked at it and it made me smile. It was the first thing we spent. It was totally awesome. I was like, I was showing everyone that was around me on the flight. I was so funny because I looked at next morning, you know. It was the first thing I got taking pictures of you guys too, and I saw that and just started laughing. Yeah, I had to share that with everyone here last week. Okay. Audrey filled me in, which I have to say, I did not guess that Curfew was going to make the top one. Surprisingly, and it's because of the discussions that we have with housing, which is why I always love this process. I totally love it. So you have Curfew coming in at 31, followed by infrastructure, which I could see that too. I could see all of these, along with housing coming in a distant third. So what we're going to be talking about is curfew, because one of the things that we've been talking about literally 1 week ago from today was that we felt like, can change really happen? Can your voice really make a difference? And so what we're going to have to start to do is figure out how can our voice make a difference? And how can we come up with some effective strategies that we can even present to? Because a lot of times what people will do is we're really good about telling people what's wrong with things, but when it comes to solutions, we seem to lack. And so usually when people come and tell me something's wrong, I always tell them, I tell you what, I would love to hear that, but you need to come up with a solution. When you come up with a solution, call me and we'll have a meeting and I'll be glad to hear whatever concerns you have. Because a lot of people don't want to take the time to fix things. They love to take the time to complain about things. And what we're going to be doing is just the opposite. We're going to say that there's some problems here that when you look at retention, that could impact people from staying here or following through all the way to the end. And so one of those things that you were talking about happens to be curfew. So what I would like for us to do is to talk a little bit more in depth about curfew. But specifically, we're going to talk about it from our perspective, which I think we've done now as far as all the problems that are there. But I would like to take a minute from an institutional perspective. This means we're going to get outside of ourselves. We're going to analyze, why do they have curfew? And we're not going to be thinking about ourselves, we're literally going to be thinking it from their perspective, because when we start to talk about a solution, we have to understand where they're coming from, we have to understand where the individual's coming from, right?
Correct.
And then we can start to develop a really good plan so we can find something that is really effective all the way around. So why do you think we have curfews? Because not all universities have curfews, right? Correct. Back into this circle to where everyone can see.
Well, at least for freshmen, it's pretty standard as a freshman on a campus, you have a curfew.
Why? Why do we have, why is it?
Because you're a freshman.
Is it standard in other universities?
18.
Is it? Yeah, so it's pretty standard.
Yeah, but
I mean,
why is that?
Curfew
standard?
was 2 o'clock. But it was curfew.
What would be the good reason for that?
I think just from looking at the website last night actually, I was looking for something completely different, but I think a lot of it has to do with maintaining the academic caliber of the university.
So part of that curfew is to maintain that and to make sure that we focus on the academics. How can that be a problem Why does curfew, how can curfew affect the academics, first of all?
Well, if there's no curfew, then they're staying out all night. And probably getting homework in there.
But just because it won't be a curfew, it doesn't mean that those students that staying out are not somewhere at a coffee shop studying or with their group doing something, just because they're out past curfew. In which they can't do that sometimes.
But that would be an individual perspective. We're thinking from the institution's end. Right now, I mean, we're gonna really think about the institution. So why do they have this curfew in place? And why do we feel like staying out too late can affect the academics? Whether we agree with it or not, just where they might be coming from that perspective.
On an institutional perspective, the reason why you have curfew is because you have to maintain that Wesleyan image. This is a private school, it is a Christian university, so you have to maintain that private image, whereas you just don't get the freedoms that a public university would have.
Yeah. I know, like, speaking as a mother also, my children have a bedtime, and that's one reason is to make sure they have adequate enough sleep that they can function throughout the day and function at a positive performance level.
So sleep deprivation really can affect performance. Would we agree with that?
Correct.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Whether what we feel about curfew or not, sleep deprivation really does have a strong impact on your overall performance and your grade performance. So when they're looking at the academic of things, they're looking at that very issue right there too, right? Okay, so we do have to acknowledge that could be one of the reasons why we have curfews. What else? So we're looking at it from the academic, and it's hard to argue with that perspective of it because sleep is important. And our job isn't to argue one way or the other, by the way. Our job is just to analyze it and figure out how we can figure out solutions around some problematic areas, particularly around what you all were talking about, jobs and being able to do jobs, especially if you're in sports and things like that, and the shift doesn't end until after curfew. When does curfew take, what time is curfew?
12:15 pretty usually.
Okay, so it's,
That's
past
on the
midnight?
weekdays, and then on the weekends it's 2 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
okay. Well, that's actually not too bad.
That's
I was
pretty
thinking,
late.
actually, I was thinking, when you all said curfew, I was thinking like 10, 10:30, I'm gonna be honest. But that's good. Okay, so that lets us know. All right. So what else, why else do we have curfew?
I think, if you have them in by 12 o'clock, they're like, what are they gonna, there's not much to do in the dorm, so like, it's kind of, homework could be a default.
Okay. So then there's nothing else to do, so then you do homework. How many of you do homework at 12 o'clock? Yeah, I honestly, I do, this is no joke. If I can't sleep, I'll get up and I'll finish writing or something. I do that myself too. Just boredom and,
I wish I could say the same.
yeah.
So when you wake up at night, like she said, you couldn't do that because the room's too full of people, like your bedroom, or can you still do that without breaking curfew?
What? I think that you can do it.
It depends on what your assignment is, because you can need the computer, and if you don't have a computer, you can need something like that. It might just be a book assignment or something, so it depends on your assignment.
Here's my question to you, going back to infrastructure, just for a second, and directly relating to curfew. If you're in at 12:15, and you're wanting to get some homework done, do you all have internet access? Is that a crucial part? So you do in your rooms and stuff? So it's just the real obstacles if you don't have a computer or if you don't. Is lights out at 12:15, or is it just?
No, you just have to be
It's gonna be in there.
In your dorm,
Just in your
quiet.
You don't have to be in your room, just in the dorm.
You'll be in your dorm quiet.
Okay.
Does the dorm have a gathering area?
A lobby, yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I should go look at them sometime, huh?
Yeah, I agree.
I really should.
I know. This is
I
very
feel bad,
insightful.
just-
Yeah,
I don't know.
very, very insightful. That's great.
This could be completely, really stretching it and reaching, but, it could be just part of conditioning, also conditioning that you get into this routine and you get into this cycle that, at 12:30, you start kind of wanting to wind down, that might be just conditioning for adulthood and, being a professional and
Yeah,
being responsible.
that's a good point too. Yeah, because I will tell you, I don't know, Professor Ree, what time do you go to bed?
Usually I go to bed at 10 thinking I'm gonna read, and I wake up with a book on my face.
Yeah, I do too. That's so funny. I have a Kindle. It's like always out there with my glasses halfway off. Yeah, the same thing. I'm about 10:30 at the latest. And I like to like start shutting down about 9:30. Only because I'm up at Adam at 5:30.
Yeah, I get up at 5.
And so our work schedules are kind of deem us to have to be able to get up and get at it again.
But see, once you get used to that, I don't have an alarm.
Yeah, I don't
I
either.
can't sleep past then.
Yeah.
I might lay there a while if I can relax or something, but I don't feel like I want to.
Today, was gonna sleep in. I was up at 6. And I'm like, ah, it kills me.
Got a half hour.
I got a half hour, that's exactly right. So let's talk about, what do you think is an appropriate curfew? What are we trying to strive here when we're saying curfew is a problem? What exactly are we trying to, what are we hoping to gain? What time do you think is effective? 0? Just, seriously, just no curfew at all?
No curfew.
Okay, what are some of the rest of you all, how do you all feel about that?
I personally understand like the curfew and like opposite sex dorms and stuff like that, but outside of that, I don't think we should have a curfew.
Mhm.
Like, I completely understand that like we can't be in the opposite dorm
Mhm.
past a certain point, but I don't think we should have a curfew beyond that.
Okay.
But another reason for the curfew is so they know where you're at, and they technically won't be responsible for you if you're off campus.
Mhm.
If they
It's a
have a
safety
curfew,
issue.
you can, like, will issues.
So they don't invest in security
Mhm.
cameras or.
Well, we in Barnesville, everything closed at 11 anyway, so
Yeah, that's
where you
true.
gonna go?
Well,
Walmart.
that is true. Short of
Can't get out
Walmart,
Walmart.
yeah, exactly. Everything really does shut down at 11, so there's really not anything really to do in a community like this past 11 too. Can you say your point again?
Like, they know where you're at with the curfew, they don't have to worry about your safety or nothing.
So part of what you think, where they're coming from with the curfew and setting that up is 1, for academic reasons, 2, for safety, and Bridget, you said another one. Conditioning yourself for that professional livelihood as well to hit the greatest success. So talk to me about the obstacles of curfew that has hindered your ability to sustain here at OWU. How has it been a hindrance? I know someone talked about work. Let's talk about that one. What is the obstacle there with work and curfew?
Some, like Buffalo Wild, like Rayleigh was saying, Buffalo Wild Wings doesn't close till 2, like, I think after time, like, because the bar still stays open, so they would have to stay there, and like, they would get off, but they'd have to clean, and they'd have to wait, and so you would be after curfew, after 2, like, on the weekends, or like during the weekday after 12:30.
Okay. So there are establishments where work becomes a problem. And you
Yeah,
kind of
and then
need
also,
it
I think
done.
also Two Sisters stays open.
Mhm, they do, now that you, yeah, they do, into late to the evening hours, yeah. So it really can hinder your job, especially, and I know some of you talked about sports, it's very hard to fit in a job with sports and everything, and you kind of have those late night shifts too, can be a problem as well. And so that is a good area, that we do need to address, is what happens if your job needs to stay up past that. So what do they do? What do you do?
Well, they just call somebody that's in the dorms, and they're like, hey, can you come open the door for me? And then they have to get out of whatever they're doing and come down and open the door.
Okay, so the curfew means that the doors are locked at that
Yes.
particular point, and so then you have to wake someone up in order to come down and
Or
do
you're
that.
stuck outside.
Okay.
What else happens, like, is there a consequence, do you get in trouble?
There
Yeah,
can
you
be.
get
If you
fined.
get caught,
You
yeah.
get warned,
Like,
then you get
You have to sneak in. That's what they're saying.
Right. Can I say something?
Sure.
Like, the only thing that I have with like the whole work situation is that like on average, like at this school, how many people are actually working that late? Like, it's maybe it's like maybe a lot or maybe a little, but like on average, how many? Like, not many of us or people on this campus that live on campus are working past curfew,
Yeah,
like seriously.
that's really good to know, because that's a really good question. That's something we could survey when we're looking at curfews, is how many of these people does it really affect, We have to have, whatever we take on, we have to have a reason behind it, and we have to have some validity behind it and what we want to do. This was one that I found, I was really shocked that it was our first one, but one I was afraid it was going to be a little difficult to do. However, this is the one that you're saying is an issue for you all. Is the issue really the curfew? Is the issue the fact that you're being superimposed a curfew? Talk to me about that. Is that really what's going on? Is the fact that you're finally
I feel like even without a curfew, most people will still be in at a reasonable time,
Yeah.
even without the curfew. I think it's just the fact that it's like, oh, I have to go back at 12:30.
Mhm.
And then like those people that do stay up all night doing homework, what if they wanna go get something to eat? They can't even leave their dorm.
I mean, it's good, I'm glad, and I appreciate you being very open and honest about that. I remember being 18 once, I do, and I, even now, you know, I superimpose my own curfew, someone doesn't tell me I have to, I do that to myself, and so I do respect the fact that there's a lot of that intrinsically you'd like to do that yourself as well.
And then even if you stayed on campus and you wanted to say, like, there's like, little, like you put money in and they, what is it called?
Vending
Yeah,
machine?
but you have, yeah, but like if you live in Wesley,
If you hadn't said it, I was
yeah.
gonna search, my brain was searching myself.
Then you have to go, like, if you wanted to get something in Cola, you'd have to put, like,
Something in the door.
yeah, you have to put something in the door, and then you gotta find somebody in Cola that's gonna be able to open the door for you. It's just like all I wanna do is get a bag of chips, and then but
And
you
you
have
can
to,
still get in trouble,
Yeah.
making a little stroll
Yeah.
across.
what are you doing, what are you doing? I'm just getting something to eat.
Okay. Okay. That's wonderful to hear. Anyone else want to say anything about
One
curfew?
thing I don't like about curfew too is like, if they're not, like, let's say you're watching a movie and it goes past 12:30, it forces people to stay off campus, like, they can't go back because they're gonna get in trouble, so then they're forced to stay off.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, and they don't like the whole like having sex thing, but that could actually make it worse.
Yeah, and I see some safety issues there too. If people can't get a hold of someone and they're getting off at work at 2 o'clock in the morning, I mean, I really do find that to be a safety problem. I think it's one that we do need to take a serious look at. Because if you're coming back off of work and you're doing it regardless, I mean, you have a job that's getting off at 2 in the morning and you have to depend on whether you can wake someone up. I don't know about you, but I am like a really hard sleeper once I finally crash. And so that would be a little unnerving. And then what do you do if you can't get a hold of anybody? Yeah.
Has anybody ever tried to get an exception for like work like that?
That's a good question.
The girl that stays in alcohol for me, actually, she works at Buffalo, and she just talked to the RA, and the RA has security do it for her.
Okay, so there are exceptions to that. So we do have a leveling system here where, I mean, there is that privilege, not leveling system, but a privilege in the sense that kind of a work release. That if you work, then all you gotta do is talk with your RA works it out with the security, so she just lets the security know.
Yeah, because I have run track with my RA, and we were talking about it, and she was just like, yeah, Ashley just came up to her and explained it to her, and then she thought it was fine.
That's
And
great.
like they said, it's really not that many, so I don't think it'd be a problem with them making an exception, like an exception letting them in, you know.
Mhm. Okay. That is absolutely wonderful to know, because that would be my first concern is the security. That's why it's so great, so someone like me, I can't make an assumption that we don't have this out there, because it's a lot of times we do have that, and so that was my first concern was safety, and it sounds like here they would very much address that type of scenario. In this room, we have 18-year-olds all the way to what? Who's the oldest in this room? 23? Okay, all right, yeah, I'm not gonna tell you my age, so. So we have a wide variety, yeah. So we have 18 to 32, but on campus, I'd say 18 to 23 probably being the longest range possibly. Let's talk, Allie suggested one thing. You tell me what you think about this, a leveling system. Is that, I know that's what she was really hoping that they would finally get to. How do you feel about that? Let's talk about that and what that would look like.
Somebody talked about, what is that leveling? I missed it.
Allie had made this was Allie's suggestion when we were exploring curfew and some of the obstacles behind curfew, is that she was really hoping last Friday that they would look at it, that if you're a freshman, you can understand keeping these kind of things, but as you get older and along with your achievements of academics, you kind of win that freedom of not having those restrictions of curfew. Basically learning how to operate, is what she said, as an adult when you get out there into the professional world. What did you all think about that? That was one of Allie's suggestions.
I mean, I think it would encourage people to do better in academics too.
Do you?
And that would be one of the points, like they'd be like, oh, if I do get good grades, then, I mean, I think,
How would you be able to tell them who, like, when someone just walked on campus, who's,
I don't know.
They just simply don't have the technology.
yeah, like, how would you be able to tell that I have a 3.9 and the person next to me is like 2.5? How would you be able to tell that, just looking at his walk?
And color coded.
They gonna have to share out a little money. They got to dish out a little money to like, cause like, I mean, I know like other universities, like they have the key card scanned in, for every dorm or whatever, and so like, of course, this is your card, this is your ID, and your card doesn't scan it to a witness zone, nothing like that, but we just simply don't have that kind of technology, it's just cut and dry.
We may be able, that may be something that they might be wanting to look at though, because they are looking at security issues, because there's been some problems with theft and stuff on campus. So for security purposes, even for that, just getting in and out of the dorm, being able to get in and out, even if you get in trouble, you can get in.
Right,
You don't have to wake somebody up for.
right, yeah. That is a great thing. What I would like for us to do is to kind of divide up, what time is it? Do we have a few minutes?
3:07, probably 20 minutes.
Okay. What I would like for us to do is count off into 3 groups. And I would like for you all to really explore some options. What is it that we're trying to achieve and some solutions that you have towards curfew that you would like to see in place? So what I would like to do is count off in 3. Can you start with me? 1,
2,
3.
1,
2, 3.
1. Good job.
What if we're not like for the curfew situation type?
Well, we're going to address this particular one, but we're going to be taking on some others as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to kind of go with a couple of directions here, but we'll talk about that in just a brief moment, okay? So let's go ahead, let's put 1s over here, 2s back there, 3s over here. And let's just take a minute, go ahead and get into your groups. Does anyone have a paper and pencil? I need one person from each group to write something down.
I have 1, 3. Are we doing solutions?
So now you're going to go ahead, if you have, I need one person to have a piece of paper and write something down. Can one of you grab something? Thank you. What I would like you to do is just take 10 minutes, and I would like you to, within your group, start talking about realistic solutions that can help address the issues of curfew. Does everyone understand what they need to be doing?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, you have a couple minutes. Let's start exploring. And if one person